here at Crypto.com Arena between the Sparks and Caitlin Clark and the Fever. Clark with 11 to go along with her game-high 6 assists.
They said, settle down. She said, do your job. Then, on a night, the Indiana Fever held a 14-point lead, playing their finest ball of this early season. An official decided the most lethal player in women's basketball had to be shut down. You just saw it. You watched her approach that ref, hands clapping, eyes fixed, voice loud, not because she lost her cool, but because she was giving him a piece of her mind. Instead of handling it like every pro official on earth is trained to manage a frustrated superstar, he decided to slap her with a technical foul. A technical called on a player who was actually winning against a star with 20 points in a total statement game. Against a player who, let's be honest, has a long and documented history of heated friction with very specific members of this officiating roster. I am Dre Fiber, and you are watching Street Hoops. We do not run from the noise. We head straight for it. Tonight, we have to break it all down. That technical foul on Caitlin Clark, the official who called it, and why this Indiana Fever offense is built in a way that should spark some very uncomfortable questions. Plus, what this 87-78 win over the Los Angeles Sparks says about this team's path in 2026. Because while winning hides a lot of mistakes, it cannot cover up everything. Not when you look this closely. Definitely not on this channel. Let's start with the moment that turned a massive lead into a headline. With 20 seconds left in the half, Clark was whistled for an offensive foul. Fine. A shaky call at a bad time, but it happens in basketball. That is just hoops. But what came next is where the story gets spicy. Clark walked up to an official and let her frustration fly, yelling and clapping. She was animated. She was definitely loud. She was frustrated. A pro athlete in a game she was taking over, pushing back against a whistle she thought was trash. Here is my personal take on all of this. No filter. Everything she did right there happens in any NBA, WNBA, or EuroLeague game every night of the week without a technical foul being issued. Players chirp at refs, especially the superstars. That is just part of the DNA of pro basketball. Clark's actions weren't out of the ordinary. What the official did in response, however, certainly was. The ref let it go at first, which means he heard her, he processed her words. He decided it did not cross the line, then he suddenly changed his mind. Seconds before the half, against a player who had been winning that battle all night. That call deserves some serious scrutiny, because the only thing that changed between a warning and a technical was that Clark kept on speaking. And players keep talking to officials every single night in pro hoops without it ending like that. The man behind the whistle is Jason Alabanza. He gave a technical to Clark before Indiana headed back to the locker room for the half. The Fever still took it 87-78, but I am not letting this slide just because they got the win. Clark now has 9 total technical fouls in her WNBA career. 6 as a rookie, 2 in an injury short in 2025, and now 1 to start 2026. That is a significant number. The real question for the league isn't just the total count, but who is blowing the whistle and under what specific circumstances, and whether the standard for her is the same standard applied to every other player in the WNBA, because the evidence suggests it isn't. Clark's frustration with these officials doesn't just come out of nowhere. It comes from 2 years of proof that the rough treatment she takes on the court doesn't get the same whistles that other players would definitely get. The fans know it, and the broadcasters have definitely noticed it. Even Clark has addressed it in post-game interviews, using the kind of careful language you only use when you know every word will be picked apart. Whether the refs are calling enough fouls for Clark has been a huge controversy since her first day in the league. Analysts across the sports world have noted that Clark is often targeted with hard contact and that officials haven't always done enough to keep her safe. This isn't just a fringe opinion. This has been the main conversation about her relationship with officiating since her very first pro game. Yet here we are in 2026, watching her get a technical for simply telling a referee to do his job. That is exactly the situation we are in. The player getting the absolute worst whistle relative to the physical contact she takes is the same one getting slapped with technicals for actually calling it out. Draymond's take, That is no coincidence. It is a specific dynamic that has been playing out for 2 years straight now. Let's talk money. If you think this is only about basketball, you're missing the broader economic shift happening in the WNBA. Thanks to the new collective bargaining agreement starting this season, player paychecks are hitting record highs across the entire league. The salary cap exploded to $7 million this year, a massive jump from $1.5 million in 2025. Rookie and minimum salaries now start at $270,000. That is up from $66,000 just one season ago. This is a seismic shift in the financial reality of women's basketball, and honestly, it is way overdue. But with bigger checks come bigger fines. Technical fouls now cost $500 for each of your first 3 offenses. Compare that to 2025 when Clark was fined for a tweet. "I'm dead serious," she wrote. "Refs couldn't stop us." She posted that after a playoff win while she was sidelined with an injury, just supporting her teammates from the bench. The league hit her with a $200 fine for a social media post celebrating a win that mentioned the refs. She just fired back with laughing emojis. $200 for a single tweet? The league wasn't playing around even then. Fast forward to 2026, and the money at stake in these heated moments has more than doubled. Yet, the officiating, accountability mechanisms, and the transparency around assignments or how problematic patterns get reviewed, none of that has evolved in a way that matches the commercial and financial growth of this league. Now, let's get back to the hardwood. There's a game story here that's just as wild as the whistle drama, and it's vital for this team's future. The Fever beat the Sparks 87-78. Clark dropped 20 points and 8 assists, a solid performance even on a night when her outside shot just wouldn't fall. We will break that down shortly. But she found other ways to dominate that showed real growth. This wasn't just scoring, it was a masterclass in evolving her game under pressure. Her driving game was absolutely lethal. Clark sliced into the paint over and over, splitting the defense and finishing at the rim in ways we haven't seen before. When the 3 isn't dropping, elite guards find another gear. Tonight, Caitlin Clark found hers. That ability to pivot and reorient her offense mid-game rather than just forcing deep shots is the mark of a player becoming truly dangerous. My honest take? As a basketball junkie, a Caitlin Clark who can kill you off the bounce and from deep is a completely different nightmare than just a perimeter shooter. That interior dominance, watching her game grow inside the arc, might be the most fascinating storyline in the WNBA right now. But I have to be real here because Street Hoops doesn't do comfortable talk. Those shooting numbers from deep need context. Clark went 1 for 7 from downtown in this one, 1 for 7. That is a rough stat line for the most legendary long-range shooter in the entire history of women's college hoops. The lazy analysis is to just say she had a bad shooting night and move on. We don't do lazy here. If you actually study this offense and watch how the plays are developing, you'll see who gets the easy looks and who has to fight for every shot. When you look at who is being set up for open perimeter shots versus who has to force contested looks, a very different story begins to emerge. Kelsey Mitchell's a walking bucket. Nobody on this channel will argue that. In 2025, she put up 20 points per game and led the league in threes. She is an absolute elite offensive weapon. But the real question tonight wasn't about Mitchell's ability to score. The question is whether this Indiana Fever offense is built to maximize Caitlin Clark's elite production or if she's just being used as a facilitator for Kelsey Mitchell. Looking at the film from tonight's game, the answer clearly points toward the latter being true. Let's look at the tape. Mitchell had 17 points by the halftime break. 17 points on a massive volume of shots compared to her teammate who happens to be a global superstar. Last I checked, she is the most marketable athlete in the history of women's professional basketball. Mitchell went 8 for 15 from the floor with a strong stat line, but the box score won't tell you which plays were drawn up to get her those looks. They won't tell you who controlled the offense versus who was just trying to create within the flow. But the tape doesn't lie. And this Fever season's game film is revealing a massive systemic imbalance in how scoring chances are actually being handed out between these two stars. Look, I want to be fair here, and fairness is something I prioritize even on a drama channel. Mitchell isn't the problem. Stephanie White has built a real title threat in Indiana. The plan is for Clark, Mitchell, and Aaliyah Boston to be a three-headed monster that shreds defenses with multiple scoring threats. When that structure works, it's absolutely lethal. When Clark and Mitchell find their rhythm and Boston dominates the post, the floor spacing and shot quality for everyone gets a massive boost. The problem isn't that Kelsey Mitchell is a co-star. The problem is what happens after Caitlin Clark passes. She kicks it out, creates space, and makes the right read to open up a teammate, but then the play keeps going and the ball never finds her again. Getting Clark back into the scoring mix after she sets someone up has been hit or miss in these early games. That lack of consistency is the difference between a 25-point night and a 20-point night where a 1-for-7 stat line makes her look like she's struggling. She didn't struggle tonight. She lacked perimeter rhythm because the flow of this offense wasn't exactly designed to keep her in rhythm from beyond the arc. That's a vital distinction to make. Coach Stephanie White has mentioned she wants Clark covering more ground on the court this season, letting her move more freely and taking away the stress of bringing the ball up 94 feet against full court pressure every single time. That shows a coach trying to optimize how Clark is used, which is definitely a good sign. The real question is whether that vision is actually being realized yet in the play calls and how the supporting cast reads and reacts to Clark's every move. Tonight's evidence suggests there's still a major gap between what the team wants to do and what's actually happening. Let's get back to the dynamic between Clark and the referees, because there's a part of this story that isn't getting enough attention. Clark was just one technical foul away from a one-game suspension during her entire rookie season. Think about that. In her first year as a pro, with zero experience at this level, she hit 6 technicals, 1 short of an automatic seat on the bench. This isn't a story about a player who can't control herself. This is about an officiating climate that held her to a standard that produced a staggering number of techs for a rookie finding her way. And now we're in her 3rd professional season, and the same old pattern is still playing out. This time it involved an official who let an interaction slide before suddenly deciding to blow the whistle, which proves that the root cause of this friction hasn't been fixed yet. The WNBA has a real chance here, and I'm being serious. This isn't just me playing up the drama for views. The league is currently experiencing a period of massive historic growth. This season's salary cap is $7 million, up from $1.5 million just a year ago. Those embarrassingly low player salaries are finally being fixed. The commercial power of the WNBA is at an all-time peak, largely fueled by the massive wave of attention Caitlin Clark brought when she entered the league. This is when the league's basic infrastructure has to evolve, including how referees are held accountable and the transparency of their evaluations to finally match this new commercial and institutional reality. You can't have your biggest star at the center of constant officiating drama and just meet it with total silence. That isn't a sustainable model. The fans see it, they always see it. After that tech on Alabanza, social media exploded with the kind of unified rage that only happens when a nerve is repeatedly struck. People were calling out the official by name, highlighting his history with Clark, and describing the foul as soft, targeted, and part of a much larger pattern. Look, social media outrage isn't exactly the same as legal evidence. Comments and angry fans need some context, but when these same complaints surface game after game, season after season, across different refs, that's no longer just noise. That's data. It's not the whole story, but it deserves a real response instead of a $500 fine and total silence. Let us look at the other stats from this matchup. This win is about more than just the referee drama. The Indiana Fever coughed up 16 turnovers. 16. That is a stat that should keep Stephanie White up at night, no matter the final score. Why did it not sink them? It really just comes down to one thing. The Los Angeles Sparks were just as messy, giving back 19 turnovers to help cancel out the damage. But Indiana cannot expect a ring if they assume every opponent will be this generous with the basketball moving forward. 16 turnovers against a disciplined squad will usually get you blown out by double digits. That number has to drop fast as the level of competition heats up this season. This team has no path to greatness while averaging 16 turnovers. That is simply not winning basketball in the WNBA. The bright spot to balance out those errors was the free throw shooting. It really deserves some credit. 87% from the stripe is elite. That kind of precision pays off over a long season. It holds up under fourth quarter pressure and separates the closers from the teams that hand victories back when it actually matters most. Indiana shot those free throws like a squad that put in the extra work. It is a massive plus. Pair that with better rebounding, where they beat the Sparks by 7 on the glass. Their grit and hustle metrics were way better than what we saw in that opening loss to Dallas. Progress deserves a shout out, even when things are still looking a bit shaky in spots. Clark pushed the Fever to a 48-34 lead at the break, fueled by an 18-5 run. An 18-5 run. That stretch proves what this team can do when the plays connect, the movement is crisp, and every player is locked into the same game plan. The issue is that a roster this gifted should not have that chemistry appearing and disappearing in waves. The mission for 2026 is keeping that level high for 40 minutes, not just showing flashes of brilliance between long stretches of chaos. Clark came out hot, dropping 7 points in the first 2 minutes. She racked up 3 assists in the opening quarter alone. At halftime, she had 11 points and 6 assists, despite not hitting a single shot from beyond the arc. Even so, she was clearly the best player on the court. She attacked the paint and set up teammates at a level that only happens when she is leading the way. When the 3-point shots were not falling for her, she fought her way to 20 points with tough drives and interior finishes. It is a brand new, aggressive dimension to her offensive game. That is real evolution. She has added a layer to her scoring that makes her a nightmare to scout. Now she creates massive problems for the defense, even when her signature shot is not landing. I want to leave you with one final thought about Caitlin Clark and her impact. These early 2026 games need context because it is the most vital part of the whole story. She is putting up elite numbers while playing on a team that is still learning how to use her. Those shooting percentages from deep do not show you her true ceiling. They show the quality of looks she gets in a system that has not yet been tuned to maximize the greatest weapon in her arsenal. The best is still coming. That technical foul from Jason Alabanza is not just about Clark losing her cool. It is about a star who has been taking hits and dealing with ref drama for over 2 pro seasons. She finally hit a breaking point right as she was taking over the game. It felt wrong to be penalized while playing that well. Another bad call. The win was real. The 87-78 score was real. 20 points? Real. But the deeper questions are also real. Who is this offense really supposed to be built around? Why is the biggest name in the league stuck in another officiating mess with a referee who has a clear history of issues with her? When does the league realize that staying silent about these patterns of behavior is more toxic than just admitting they are looking into it? Fans want to see some real accountability. These questions do not just vanish because the Fever won. They do not go away just because Clark had a good stat line. These issues are core to the team identity. They will remain until someone in a position of authority decides to address them with real action, not just a fine and a template letter. The Fever are good, maybe even very good, but being good is not the mission. The mission is being great. And that jump depends on answering every single question I just asked. This is Dre Fever. You have been watching Street Hoops. If this breakdown hit different, if you are fuming about that technical foul like every Fever fan with eyes should be, hit the like button. The algorithm needs to know this talk is happening. Drop your take below. Did that tech on Clark actually deserve a whistle? Or was Alabanza totally out of pocket? Is the Fever offense just a Kelsey Mitchell show with Clark playing second fiddle? I need to hear where you stand. If you are new here and like what you see, hit subscribe. Street Hoops is exactly where the real basketball talk lives. No corporate filters, no safe opinions, just the game, the drama, and the cold, hard truth. We will see you on the next one.